live event here today. So essentially what we're doing is trying to give back to any executives that are looking for work, challenging job searches as well. At Ready Set Exec, of course, we do both sales, marketing roles, and really we're looking to partner with teams and candidates across that space. So, John, if you want to elaborate a little bit on that and introduce yourself, we can get things kicked off.
All right, well, we're gonna get started here. So unfortunately, we had a couple of our panelists fall ill or have family commitments. And so it's Tegan and myself that are going to be speaking today. Let me tell you a little bit about Tegan for those that don't know. Tegan is an award-winning resume writer and certified career coach. She serves as a job search and career subject matter expert for the National Resume Writers Association, JobScan, and LinkedIn, which led her to her top career expert to follow recognition on LinkedIn. And Tegan has served over 3,500 professionals throughout her career as a recruiter, workforce development leader for Department of Labor agencies, and now in her current role as managing director of Jolt Your Career, her company helping with resumes and your job search. So happy to have Tegan here joining us today on our panel, and we're going to get started with some LinkedIn tips and tricks for myself to help everyone get started on their job search. So some of these tips will be, let's say, more basic, and then we'll get into the more advanced stuff in terms of how to use LinkedIn to help you on your job search. And obviously, we know that not everyone has the same level of competency with LinkedIn. So, please keep in mind as we go through this. So first off, just going to share my screen. And we're going to go through some basic LinkedIn things here that'll help you with your job search. All right. So first thing you can do when you're obviously looking to apply for jobs is go into LinkedIn, click on jobs, and do a search for the type of jobs that you're going to want to apply for, right? Pretty simple enough. Let's say we're looking for a director of operations. Next, I'm going to pick a city or state, let's say LA. Now that's going to bring up a list of jobs that make that search query, right? But what we want to do is really drill this down. So the first thing we want to do is say date posted. Switch that to past 24 hours, which is the most frequent, fresh job posts. Show results. Next thing I want to do is then pick whether it's remote or hybrid or on-site, whichever job preference you have. Let's say for on-site remote jobs. Now, the next thing you want to do is click on set the alert button. There's a button right there where it says the job set alert. And what that's going to do is now alert you on a daily basis for this job search. That way, as the new jobs come up, you'll be alerted on LinkedIn so you can apply to them. Okay. Now, I think everyone has done this before in some capacity. Maybe you haven't created alerts or not, but I think this is a good start, right? So now we have a list of jobs here, 26 results of jobs that I can apply for. And you're going to go out and start applying. But applying is not enough, not in 2023 going into 2024. You can't just apply to a job. We have to actually follow up and make some effort to see who we can find out there. So let's say I have an interest in this job at DICE, right? So I click on the job. And in the perfect world, it loads up right away. I'm going to click on the company name, DICE. One of the first things I'm going to do once I bring up the company is click follow. And I'm already following this company, which is great. If I want to make intros into this company, I have connections that follow this page. So you may want to check on your connections, see if anybody knows someone at DICE that would be able to support me, right? So I follow the page, I check my connections. I'm now clicking on people. And clicking on people basically brings up employees that are associated with DICE. They work there and they've been associated with them on LinkedIn, meaning they're an employee, right? The first thing I want to do is find the head of talent at this organization, the CEO, other people that would be of interest for networking for the purpose of following up on my job posting. So I'm going to type in head of talent. see if anyone comes up. If that doesn't work, I can clear that. Type in HR. That's a good search query usually for most companies. And we'll scroll through all the different people here to see who's the head of HR, who's the decision maker for the hiring, see who there is. And once I do find the right person, so let's say director of operations, probably the best person here to connect to, I'm going to click on that person, send them a connection request, and possibly an in-mail. If you have a premium account, you're able to send an email to that person. So a quick message could be, hey, I applied, well, I'd like to follow up, or connect with them and try to start a conversation, right? If you have mutual connections, it'll also be listed there. So if you have a friend that knows Lindy, they can maybe make you an intro to them and they're the hiring manager, right? And this way, if you've applied online, you're one of maybe several hundred applicants. Getting an intro from a colleague to Lindy may be a better way to get that job as opposed to just through the front door applying, right? So I'm going to connect to Lindy. I'm going to message her. I'm going to find other people at the company at Dice, find mutual connections with Dice, and continue that follow-up, right? And that's part of just chasing that job lead, right? And so I'm going to do that on a daily basis as I go from application to application. Good rule of thumb is for every application that I make, I'm going to connect to 3 people at that company and try to make something happen in terms of having a conversation with one of them, right? For example, if I'm running for a sales position and I apply at Dice, I may want to connect with some of the salespeople there and see if I can start up a conversation. Hey, how is it working at Dice? Is it fun to work there? Should I work there? I've applied, right? And have a conversation with a fellow salesperson that would have the same role as you. And maybe that's a good way to get in. And hey, can you give me an intro to your manager that's the hiring decision for this position, right? A lot of different ways to work the angle of networking in terms of getting in front of the right decision maker. But this is something you want to be doing for every single application you make, because if you're applying online, especially for remote jobs, some of the remote positions that are being applied to can have up to thousands of applications right now. It can get pretty ridiculous and it can be very disheartening for you if you're applying and you're not getting any kind of interviews whatsoever. So I definitely recommend connecting with the people, following the company, following up on networking with those people. Okay, that's the first step. Second step is, things you can do today, for example, to immediately get your LinkedIn better views from recruiters, as well as just optimizing it for job searching, right? So the first thing you can do is go to your profile. If you click on the More button right there, there's a Build a Resume button. Everyone will have this on your LinkedIn profile, okay? Click Build a Resume. Once I click that, Create from Profile. Once I click Create from Profile, now I'm going to put my job title in. So we'll stick with the same theme, Director of Operations. It'll self-populate, right? So I pick that job title, click Apply. And now what LinkedIn has basically done is said, okay, if we're building you a resume for a Director of Operations role, here's some keyword checks. And if you look on the right side, you have a huge list here. Keyword check found in your resume, as well as a list of keywords that are missing with suggested keywords below. So if everyone's looking on the right side there, that's literally LinkedIn telling you what you're missing on your resume. So suggested keywords, these are all search engine optimized keywords that you want to show now in your resume to help improve your rankings on LinkedIn search. So to give everyone an idea of how a recruiter would work, average recruiter would go into LinkedIn Recruiter, the system. They're going to type in Director of Operations in your city, let's say LA. They're going to come up with a list of several hundred people that come up in that search. Now, the ones that are fully optimized, having all these keywords in their profile, are the ones that are going to have the first few pages of results, right? So if there's 100 pages of results, you want to be in the first 10 pages, right? To be in the first 10 pages, you got to have all those keywords optimized. And so what you want to do now is take those keywords that you see here that are suggested or missing. I can click on show more as well. And it tells you some more keywords that are like continuous improvement, for example, is another one that's missing. Okay. Now, all these keywords, I want to incorporate them into my resume throughout, right? If you can't incorporate them or you're having trouble adding them in, you can do what I did, which is just add keywords right into your summary to help optimize you for your search, right? Now, what this is going to do is basically give you a better chance with the recruiters, because when they pull up a list of candidates in your city or connected to this job, you're now going to be in the first few pages of results, right? It just helps optimize you top of the pile, right? Now, not every recruiter is going to look through 100 pages of search results to find a director of operations. Average recruiter is going to look through maybe several hundred at most. And so they may not find you if you're at the bottom of that search result. And so by doing this search engine optimization, adding the keywords in, you're giving yourself the best chance to be found, right? That's all it's doing is allowing people that are looking for director of operations to now see you better, right? Another thing you want to do with your LinkedIn, of course, is going through every section and adding in a lot of detail. One of the things I always like to see is people adding, for example, honors and awards, volunteer experience, your education as well. I don't typically recommend putting the year of graduation, but at least having the schools that you went to showing are important. And this is all just creating a story, right? It's creating a story of your career, how you went to school, how you completed school, where you started working, the challenges you faced. Creating a whole story around that is part of your personal brand, right? And we're going to have Tegan definitely touch on this a little bit with her resume piece that she's going to go into here shortly. But just want to say how important it is that everyone has a very complete LinkedIn profile. Now, one of the basic things you can do right off the hop today is go into your LinkedIn profile, create a summary that's engaging, tells people exactly what you want to do, and also create your header at the top of your LinkedIn. So for myself, for example, it says your recruitment partner in growth. You want to have this be very specific to the type of job or thing that you want to do. So if you're looking for an operations role, you can say operation excellence, looking for operations, anything that's very touching on exactly what you're looking to do. So when people are looking through a list of candidates and they see, operations executive, it gives you a better chance of being found as well, right? Another thing you can do, of course, is put up the green banner showing that you are open to work. I've heard a lot of people saying differing things on this. I'm always going to recommend you do that. Let's face it, once you have an interview, they're going to find out whether you're out of work or not. So if you're worried about people using that as leverage against you, if they're going to do it, they're going to do it anyways. But at least if you're found, it gives recruiters a good chance to be able to find you. So definitely recommend using the green banner while you're doing your job search. And don't worry about what other people are saying about it. There's always going to be good apples and bad apples when it comes to job searching. And, we like to have connections with the right recruiters that you want to be working with, right? Very important. All right, so that's it for me in terms of just some basic LinkedIn things here. Obviously, optimizing your profile, fixing your keywords, making sure you have an engaging summary, creating a job alert for yourself, right? And then also following up with your networking by connecting to those people and messaging them, not just doing a blind apply to jobs, okay? And so I'm going to pass this over now to Tegan to continue on with some resume tips and tricks for everyone.
Hey everybody, I am Tegan Bartos, as John said, the founder of Jolt Your Career. I am going to show you a resume because I am a visual learner and I want to show you how recruiters look at resumes. The resume that I'm showing you today, I've created, and it is for a very specific client with very specific goals. This is not necessarily what you may create. But I am going to give you a template. The team at Ready Set Exec is going to be following up in email with a template that you can use and modify based on what your goals are, you know, modifying the sections, the design, the font, the color, etc., all to be within your brand. Joel couldn't make it today, but he was going to be talking about professional branding. It's really important, especially at the executive level, that your professional brand is consistent across platforms. And so you want you want to know yourself as a leader, as an executive, not only what you've done in the past, but what you want to do in the future. I always tell my clients, you don't want to be running from something, you want to be running to something. And that is going to be the message that you want to articulate across your networking conversations, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, and then of course in the interview, which is ultimately going to get you that job offer. So I'm going to show you this resume, but please do not be intimidated by it. So here we go. All right, so this resume is rather visual because this client specifically is looking to work with founder-led startups in addition to PE or VC-backed opportunities where he is going to come in as that operations supply chain executive and scale it. And so one of his signature traits throughout his career is being a compass. He always says as a leader that he helps guide organizations and founders to their North Star, to achieve their goals, etc. So as a recruiter, this is definitely going to look at, stand out compared to all of the black and white resume templates that you've just been updating since, you maybe graduated college in the 80s and are still using. You do not need something to be this graphic. It just happens that if you are targeting PE or VC firms, or if you're going into the tech sector, or if you're in sales or anything that requires you to use visuals in your job, that may be elements that you want to use. All of this is ATS compatible. So when you upload this into the system to apply, any of the graphics and things like that won't impact at all. Some of the things down here will, but should this client not be using this resume for the specific use that we're going to be using it for, we can take out some of these things and add back in some other things based on his goals. At the C-suite level, in terms of executives, there's going to be less applying and more targeted submissions of your executive portfolio. If you do not currently have an executive portfolio, your resume, your executive bio, potentially a slide deck of your unique value proposition, I encourage you to consider doing something like that because it will transform how executive recruitment teams and hiring teams view your candidacy. If you are going to get a job by a referral, you might not even need a resume, but if you want to update it, here's what I would look at. First and foremost, is the title clear? Someplace on here, you want to make sure that you smack people in the face with the exact type of role you're looking for. So this person is looking for a global operations and supply chain role at the executive level. Okay, now I know what kind of role he wants. I forgot to edit out his phone number. Sorry about that, John. But one thing that we look at is emails. Now, I don't care what your email is. However, if someone is subconsciously going to have ageism concerns about your candidacy and you're still using like a Yahoo or an AOL, if that even still exists, you may want to upgrade your email to a Gmail account. Definitely have your LinkedIn URL hyperlinked on here or have it spelled out so someone can easily find you. When I submit candidates for hiring managers, it's going to be their resume and it's going to be their LinkedIn URL. Those things get looked at. So definitely make sure that that's there. One of the trends in executive resume writing is having some type of a header. who are you as an executive leader? What is the value that you bring? Because as a recruiter, I'm skimming through half of this stuff. I'm going to look at what your titles were, and then at what companies you've worked for, skimming through for some of your accomplishments. And then if you make the next cut, like if you make that first cut, then I'm going to go back in for a more in-depth look. But here, the title and some of this language has been changed because I was, as everyone else who is dealing with health issues in their family, my family got hit with RSV over Christmas too. So, but as an example, masterminding scalable and sustainable operations for industry leading brands. It could really be whatever. Like what do you do? What value do you provide? If you are using an objective statement, please delete it. No one cares about what you want. Like, it's just, if you want to be at an organization that has work-life balance, great. But then say that you're a leader who fosters, that type of environment then versus an objective of what you want. Show them who you are, what value you're going to bring in a couple of sentences, because it's going to be hit or miss if a recruiter is going to look at your summary statement or not. But in your summary statement, you definitely want it to be thoughtful. This is essentially the foundation for your elevator pitch. Who are you as a leader, and what value do you bring, and where are you going to provide the most value? And you can do that in a couple of quick sentences. And if you would like to have featured accomplishments, you can. And so, this client grew 2 businesses into billion-dollar organizations, expanded the organizations, globally, saved millions of dollars. I added in this quote from the CEO. You don't need a quote on your resume, but if you've worked for a high-profile organization, or if you have an absolute phenomenal reference that you are going to use, you can go ahead and throw that on your resume. If your former CEO gave you credit for something, or wrote you a LinkedIn recommendation, or will answer the phone when you're ready to move on to that next organization, go ahead and put it. If you'd like. This is one strategy to it just builds extra levels of credibility. Okay, I'm going to be able to reach out to the CEO and founder if they're putting it on their resume. I do recommend having a small skills section. I recently reviewed a resume that had 18 lines of skills. Please do not do that, especially at the executive level. I know that you can use Microsoft Word. Can you use Power BI? Can you use, Salesforce? Certain things you just don't need. But what is most important about your, signature executive strengths? Do you have experience with M&As? Do you have global team leadership? Maybe if you're an aspiring executive, have you managed a P&L before? Things of that nature. Once you get into the executive ranks, it's going to be about strategy and people leadership. That all needs to come across. And so once you get down to your experience level, and again, this design is specifically for a portfolio that is going to be sent to a venture capitalist firm. And so it's a little more graphically rich, right? So like if he was just going to be applying to a regular role, this summary right here, this right here, all of this might be taken out. So it's just, here's the company I worked for. It's called Green Machine. Here's a description of the company. The reason why there's a description of the company is people might not have ever heard of Green Machine before. And so as a recruiter, I don't have time to look that up. Like, what is that? Like, I've never heard of it before. That's great. You grew, you saved $26 million in costs, but what is this company? So that's a little nugget that I use as a professional resume writer. And then, hey, what is your title? What are your dates of employment? And this is one of the things that I frequently do is what is your overarching leadership scope? So he currently leads 160 associates across 9 sites in North America and China. And, he's got a multi-million-dollar operating budget. And then in the bullet points, here's, some of the high wins. When I first met with this client, this company alone had 5 pages worth of wins. You don't want that. As an executive leader, you need to be able to parse down your content to be able to show what is most important in that role and how has that positioned you for the next role that you're looking for. And if you decide that you want to do something that's a little bit more visual, you can highlight some of that, $26 million in cost savings, etc. From $500 million to $1.5 billion in 18 months. Same thing for this next role. There's 38% line fill rise, 100 million in excess inventory reduction, $30 million in cost savings. As an operational leader who's looking for a role right now, who's targeting turnaround situations, how are you implementing technology? How are you shifting culture? How are you saving costs? All of those factors that are going to be most important in that role, you want to make sure is captured here and is easy to skim. So when you're skimming this might be a little too visual for some people, and the resume template I'm going to send you isn't as visual. But as you're skimming it, I can look and see, okay, as a recruiter, I can look and say, oh, wow, these are some great wins. I want to look more and see what else what else he won. And in this client's case, if you've worked for, a Fortune 500 company or had, earlier career success, that's not something that you necessarily want to take out. A lot of times you hear the advice after 10 years, 15 years, don't put it on your resume. But if you've worked for powerhouses, you might want to add it, and it might be more relevant to the organization that you're applying to now. So you can always have an early career foundations or an additional experience section or whatever that may be. So to do that, you simply modify the design slightly. So title, company, location, and you see no dates. And so as I go back into the early 90s into this client's career, it's not going to show. And at the executive level, they're going to expect you to have a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades worth of experience, but you sometimes want to minimize that. Now, this person's in this format is a 3-page resume. I prefer to stick to a 2-page resume and then a portfolio sample to elaborate on anything else that might need to be. So but in this particular VC's case, they wanted all of the information on there because they've got investors that they have to show this to. So the affiliations and board memberships are on here. The languages are on here. As an executive leader, if you can speak the languages in the nations, especially if you're a global leader that you're serving, that is going to put you into a different category of leader. You want to make sure that you don't hide the fact that you're bi or trilingual. The certifications and training that you've done. If you are an aspiring executive, and so like in this case, the emerging COO at a Stanford Graduate School of Business. So let's say you're an operations leader, but want to get to that C-suite leader, then maybe you do invest in something like that. And you can put that on there to show I went through a rigorous program to prepare for this next step in the organization. And then obviously your education. So let me rewind just a little bit. Because some of the red flags that I see on executive resumes, it's going to have like location, Chicago, Illinois, home, phone number, cell, phone number. You don't need to label your contact information. Simply put it, believe it or not, recruiters aren't dumb. I know we're really frustrating to work with at times because we're so darn busy, but we understand. I don't recommend putting a home phone number on your resume because anybody could answer the phone. So put your cell. Make sure that it's clear what role you're looking for. Make your unique value proposition crystal clear. Have a small signature strength section where you're going to highlight, and that might just be 3 bullet points underneath your summary section, highlighting your top 3 executive competencies with some details there over the career. In your experience section, make sure that you start off with strong action verbs: helmed, spearheaded, masterminded, orchestrated, piloted, slashed, grew, catapulted, responsible for, led. Those are things that kind of put us as to recruiters asleep and make you blend in with everyone else. So kind of elevate your language as you're looking to elevate your role. If you went to an Ivy League school, it's fine if you have your education at the top. Otherwise, put it at the bottom. You're not a new grad. If you are involved, if you have like cool hobbies and things like that, one of the things that's different from earlier careers than later careers is that the interview process for executives is a little bit different. And earlier in your career, you just talk about the fact that you can do the job. When you get to more executive level roles, you have to do more than just do the job. You have to be good with people too. So the interviews are less interrogation-like and more conversational. And so you want to make sure that you as a human being come across. And so on your resume, you can have your board affiliation, your board, your board memberships, your affiliations, some of the professional organizations that you're associated with. So that way the hiring team sees that you're a well-rounded person with a network. Because at the executive level, you also are then going to be responsible for succession planning and for fostering your leadership team. And so when you can come prepared with a network as an executive candidate, that is going to put you in a different realm of leadership and really make you stand out to get those top choice roles that you're looking for. You know, John kind of hinted to the power of networking. The number one way any organization that I've ever supported or worked for, and SHRM and other HR organizations and studies have found, the number one way to get a job is by being referred. And people who are referred tend to last longer in those roles, statistically. And if you're not being referred because maybe you haven't nurtured a network over the years, then you definitely want to reach out to executive recruiters like Patrick and John, because they get access to those hidden roles. If you've ever heard of the hidden job market, it's really those confidential roles that haven't been posted. And so finding executive search firms that are within your industry are definitely going to help you. And when you give them an executive portfolio, your resume, your executive bio, potentially a cover letter, maybe a slide deck, especially if you're in sales or marketing or like really anything, you know, have a polished LinkedIn profile. The moment John and Patrick get a role that you're ready for, they can submit you. But if it takes you weeks to get them something, you're going to miss out on the opportunity. The average executive role is open for 72 days from start to finish. And those first couple of weeks are critical to you being a candidate there. Because in the later days, that's when the salary negotiations happening. That's when the, you know, all of the fine details are being sorted out. And an executive search firm, John, I don't know what your guys' fill rate is. Typically, search firms are shorter. A couple of the ones that I have, it's closer to 43 days. And so if you think about that, the roles that you're competing for are maybe going to be open for 1 month to 2 months, maybe 3 months. So you need to be polished with that LinkedIn profile, with that resume, with a clear vision of who you are as a leader, the value you bring, your ideas and excitement for the organization. So there's no wait. Okay, John, that was the resume.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Tegan. And you did mention a little bit about time to search, right? So you're right. I mean, it's definitely moving at a faster pace now. I mean, for us, our average is usually between 30 to 45 days to fill an executive role. But in that timeline, we're probably reaching out to candidates for the first 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Right? And so if we don't have a candidate ready, or if we can't find them because they don't have a non-existent LinkedIn, then we may be missing out on some great talent that could be presented for the role. Now, anyone who's connected with us already and gotten into our database, you don't have that problem because you're in our system. So any roles that do come in, we will look internally first before we go externally. But having said that, it's so important to have a good profile because we're not the only recruiters in town. We realize there's tons of recruiters out there, and being able to be found and have a good first impression, that's where everyone comes into either working with a service like yours, right, to build their profile and their resume, or just doing some work on their own to get their profile looking somewhat good, having the right keywords installed, and being able to be found by a search, right?
Yes, and we're going to send that to all of you who are tuning in. So you're going to get a modern resume template that is easy to edit, that is easy to customize, that will not overwhelm you like the one that I probably just showed you. But the reason why I showed you that one is just to know the level of presence that executive leaders are putting forth. This candidate also has a slide deck of different strategies and Power BI graphics in terms of growth and whatnot to show every aspect of what an operational leader needs to achieve. And so if you're an operations leader and you're like, I don't have any of that, it's something that you might want to take the time to build out, especially if you're struggling in your job search, because the way that people used to job search yesterday isn't the way people are job searching today. The market is incredibly saturated because when we got sent home to work and companies returned to work, there was a lot of churn. And so there's quite a bit of talent on the market right now for us to look at. And organizations are also investing in executive talent differently. And so there's a lot of factors in this job market right now, which is going to require executives to be at the top of their game. You want to position yourself as an A player, not a C player. If you're looking for A player titles, A player responsibilities and challenges, and the money that comes with it, then you need to present yourself as an A player. And so that takes a little bit of thoughtful work on the front end in terms of clarity of who you are, what you want to do, what type of companies you're targeting. Because if you know exactly the opportunity that you're looking for, like it doesn't have to be a specific industry. It can just be, I love to do turnaround projects. I love to digitize organizations. I want to make sure that as an HR leader, I'm going into a people-centered organization and I want to be, a people operations leader instead of an HR, executive. Then focus on that, laser in on the goals that you're most passionate about, because when organizations look at talent, they know that you're going to be responsible for large teams, and there's going to be elements there that they want to have synergy on. Like, can you do the job? Is the team going to respond? Are you going to be able to solve our really challenging problems? And so if you know that, no, I work best, I don't want to do a turnaround situation, I want to go into a smooth sailing ship and keep it that way and make sure that I help drive progress in a stable environment. Great. There's plenty of companies in that situation. Brand yourself that way. And so when all of the pieces come together, your job search is not going to be as frustrating because you're being so thoughtful about, I know my worth and I know what I want to do. And these are the only things that I'm considering. And like, obviously, you know, the average executive job search takes 1 year. If you want to minimize that time and you have everything all polished, right? The LinkedIn profile, like John said, the resume, like I went over, and maybe you do open up to some plan B options, but definitely start with where your heart's really at first.
No, that's well said. Maybe we can get some questions from any of the attendees if you like. We have our Q&A below. You can click on and type in any questions you have for us. Give it a minute if everyone has a question. I think we're good, maybe.
We'll get LinkedIn DMs after the fact.
I'm sure. So
Oh, John, we got a couple here that had popped up from Nancy. Appreciate that, Nancy. Any tips for HR director? John, that's kind of right in your wheelhouse if you want to answer that.
For HR director, I mean, I think it's important when to notify on your resume, you know, how much of a head count that you managed or were directly responsible for. Head count definitely matters in HR, right? Was it a small business? Was it a whole division of people? Did you have HRBPs working with you? Did you have line of sight or dotted line to the talent team? Were you ever managing or doing any recruiting as well? There's a lot of different sections, let's say, of competency in terms of HR. It's important to be able to differentiate yourself in terms of what you do. So if you're typically working in a COE, working in talent, employee relations, we want to know, drill it down in terms of what you're strongest in. That's important from the HR perspective. Make sure you talk about whether you've done global or local teams only from an HR perspective. And global experience is important, of course, but also understanding the rules and regulations in different countries. So notifying which companies and countries you've worked in, and then total headcount. Headcount's always one of the biggest things we look at because we realize a company's problems at 100 headcount are totally different from a company's problems at 500 and 2,500 and so on. And so if you're stuck and you can't get another position, sometimes moving from a company that has 2,500 people where you were a director, you can move into a company that has 500 people and now become a VP because you had greater experience with a larger headcount. So one of the things we look at is headcounts, competencies, and the different types of HR functions that you've covered. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Awesome. And then Mike also commented, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. Appreciate you joining. Question from Regina. Do you think LinkedIn Premium is worth the purchase? Maybe I can kind of start off with that. Yes and no. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I know that LinkedIn, we're actually meeting with their team early January. They're going to be changing things in terms of the subscriptions and licenses come 2024. So if you're targeting, you know, first connection, excuse me, LinkedIn Premium isn't necessarily always, you know, why spend the money. But if you want to continue to grow your network, of course, again, there's going to be more and more limitations that come down the line. So if you're willing to spend, and I apologize, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but in terms of cost, but it is always worth it from our standpoint. We're always trying to grow our network as much as we possibly can. So if anyone wants to chime in on that, by all means.
Yeah, LinkedIn recently changed some people's profiles to only being allowed to connect with 5 people a month, and in which that case, spending $30 a month to be able to reach out to people at the organizations that you're interested in working with, for me is worth the investment. If at all possible, and if not, go to your local library and rent their premium subscription, so that way you can get access to it. Another nice feature is that when you are looking at roles to apply to, being able with premium, you can see more data on the organization in terms of growth, hiring trends, and who posted the role. So that my clients who use it enjoy it for those purposes.
Awesome. Thanks, Tegan. Another question from Diane James. Thank you so much for joining. How does one transition from one profession to another? So retail to full operations. And she follows up with, in terms of how do you handle over 50 and most experienced before coming to the US? John or Tegan, if you want to tackle that.
Well, one of the things that I do with my volunteer work is support immigrants that are transitioning and coming from overseas, for example, right? So if you're coming to the US or Canada and you have credentials overseas, one of the first things I would do is look at whether you can have your accreditations or certificates or education be accepted in the country you're going to, right? So if you're a PhD, will they transfer it over? Will you have credit for that? So that's one thing to check into. I would look into the government agencies to support you on that. I know for engineering, for example, if you're coming over, you have to take some tests to make sure that your engineering degree would hold water here locally. So that's something to think about, all your credentials or certificates. Next, obviously, deciding what the types of roles you'd be wanting to look for. I would say if you're used to being an executive overseas and you're coming here, is your English up to par? Is it professional English? Most likely it is. And so it's going to be an easier transition. If your English and everything else is not up to par, then you're going to have a little bit more trouble to get the same type of role, right? So I would definitely talk to a career coach if you can support you on that if you're transitioning countries. And as far as changing from retail to operations, the only thing I would say is to look at your retail experience and see the types of work that you did under operations. Because when I was in retail, for example, there was a lot of things that I would have done in my role as a manager that would have been considered operations role. Like when you're a manager, you're wearing a lot of hats, right? So you're doing a little bit of everything. So it's possible you've already touched on a lot of operations type work, but under a different title. And so I would take a look at, hey, what have I done so far under operations, and see how that could maybe be put together for a role. For example, project management would be something that would be you could easily transition from one industry to another or and so on, because it's a skill set that you can use across many industries, right? So again, this takes you some time to review, what are my skill sets? What did I do in my previous role in retail that would be fitting under operations, and what type of operations role could I get into, right? So going from a manager of an office, right, to an operations manager is not a big stretch, but it's also specific to the industry, right? If you're wanting to get into a specific industry for operations, sometimes there is some things to think about in terms of specific skill sets, specific training may be required. Again, we would need more time to go into this, but I would say at first glance, do a review of yourself, a SWOT analysis, your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and threats in terms of what have I done so far? What are my skill sets? And how can I transition that into another type of employment, right? That's something I would do for myself if I was looking to change careers. Okay.
Awesome. Another one from Paula here. Have you considered that different industries look and are attracted to different approaches? In other words, how do you differentiate for industries? Tegan, I see you nodding. If you want to tackle that one.
Yes, because as John hinted to, keywords are so important. And the keywords that are leveraged across different industries are significantly different. And so you can't change your LinkedIn profile for every single role that you're applying to. However, you can modify your resume and craft a very thoughtful cover letter, especially if you're transitioning from one industry to the next. If I'm working with a client who's looking to switch industries, I always tell them to do deep industry research on the industry that you're looking to pivot into, build relationships with people within those industries, potentially join a professional association in that industry to broaden your network, and then modify your resume to reflect that language. And so you don't want to lie. Like if you're a teacher transitioning into project management, for example, you don't want to call your students stakeholders. That just sounds ridiculous. But if you are, if you're pivoting from, one industry where it's called client versus customer, those are small tweaks that you can do just to make it feel more on point. And especially in that summary statement, you can outline some of the value that you're going to be able to bring in to that. So really wordsmith your resume to reflect that industry. And then I do recommend in that case that you write a thoughtful cover letter talking about why. Why are you interested in that new industry? Is it because I'm working with a client right now who wants to pivot into healthcare after dealing with end of life care for her mother in her 90s, and so she's looking to pivot into one of those organizations that deals with that. And she wrote a lovely cover letter talking about how her former experience and her personal experience, why there's the synergy there. Or I've got a client right now who works for a healthcare app, and so it's a technology company technically, and she's looking to pivot into working for Chief. Well, at that technology company, which is a membership site for executive women, at that healthcare company, she was a woman in a male-dominated industry who built a community platform to get more people engaged on their fitness app. Well, at Chief, it's a membership site who happens to focus on women executives. And so she was able to articulate that synergy there. So there's lots of tricks in your storytelling capabilities across your resume, across your LinkedIn profile, or across your cover letter, and then in the interview that is going to position you to switch industries. Because it is hard at the executive level to change industries, because they're going to expect that you have a certain level of acumen coming into the role versus needing to be completely trained up for the role. But it is 100% possible, hands down, see it every day. So just take your strategy up to the next level in terms of painting that picture. So hopefully that's helpful, Paula.
Great. Thanks, Tegan. Appreciate that. And last but not least, we have a question from Amy. Any place other than LinkedIn where we can/should be building our brand and applying?
With Ready, Set, Exec, you can apply to the roles.
Sure, that'd be great, but I'd say it's also dependent on the industry, right? So if your example, you're in hospitality, there's actually a really busy hospitality jobs board. It's called Hospitality Jobs. It's a website. They have tons of hospitality jobs at the exec level too. If you're in HR, I know there is hrjobs.com. There's also the SHRM website that has quite a few HR positions listed. One of the things that I always recommend for everybody is, besides LinkedIn, connecting on Slack. There's a lot of Slack communities that are actually very busy with a lot of activity in terms of jobs and stuff like that being posted. So, but I would say 99% LinkedIn. If it's not on LinkedIn, it probably is not being posted, which means it's an underground search done by an exec search firm. So part of your search strategy, I would recommend, is connecting with recruiters that will recruit the type of position you're looking for. So for example, if you're looking for an IT role, Ready Set Exec is not the type of company you'd want to connect with, but someone like Hirewell, they do IT roles, and I recommend them, right? Or MapleSoft for IT roles. So depending on the type of role you're looking for, there are search firms that can support you. I would say connecting with a couple of them at least is helpful, because they're going to get you exposed to roles that aren't posted. And a lot of the C-suite level roles are not always posted on LinkedIn or any job site, period. So that's one thing to consider, especially if it's a confidential search. If they're trying to replace someone that's already there, it will not be posted whatsoever. It's a confidential search, and only the search firm would be handling it. So, get yourself onboarded by a couple of good exec search firms in your space under your industry. Ready Set Exec, what we cover is sales, marketing, HR, and operations. That's the four type of pillars of roles that we would look for, right? So if you're in something else, I would definitely do some research on companies that can support you with your job search for that. All right. Any other
Awesome.
questions?
I think we had one more pop up from Diane again. Just in terms of how do you know you're at the executive level, and how do you get into with you and your services? So I'm not sure if Tegan, if you want to tackle that, because I think you had talked about kind of the executive coaching there. So uh,
So I don't know about you guys, but for the executive level in most corporate companies, they typically classify executives in director and above. Directors, VPs, um, um, regional president, in C-suite. And so there's a wide range of executives. In some companies, they might call them senior managers, for example. That would be, the director, the vice president, and then and so that's where that's at. And in terms of getting in touch with me and my services, you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. I drop my LinkedIn in the chat, or you can reach out to me on my website. I can drop that link here, and you're going to get an email with that information as well from the team following up. I'm off until the 8th because I need to take a break at some point. But you're welcome to DM me, and we can chat behind the scenes.
awesome. Well, again, appreciate that, Tegan. It was great to hear from you, and we again thank you so much for taking time out of your day here and giving back to some of these executives. And for anyone, like Tegan had mentioned, we will send over Tegan's information for you to follow up, ask some questions, and hopefully, she can help you out in your search as well. Janetta had mentioned, will you be following up with a discussion on branding and or post resources? Yes, 100%. We will continue to do these as we grow Ready Set Exec. Of course, our goal is to have both a strong candidate network and partnerships across the board. So we appreciate everyone's time. We hope you've had a great holiday, and of course, stay safe, and appreciate your time. Thank you all so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and thank you again, Tegan, for joining us today. Last thing, we will be following up with everybody with some emails with resume template, a copy of the recording for everyone to review to see, at your convenience, and a lot of job seeker information that will help you with your search. We wish you the best with your job search going into the new year, and hope some of the information today helped you out. So look forward to that. And our next event is tentative February 15th. It's going to be called Heart Me a Job. If you're still looking for a job, then you may want to join us for that event. We have a panelist that we're building right now for that as well. So hope to see you there. And thanks again for coming today, everybody.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.
Thanks.